So I got the idea last fall when we had our gospel meeting. Brother Brentlinger was doing his gospel meeting on the armor of God, and of course, in that example, we can do an entire week's worth of this. But what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to do things a little differently. I do have some items to show you, which are my items that have been issued to me in the National Guard. So for those who may not know, I am with the Kansas National Guard. I am a second lieutenant, Army second lieutenant, which is the lowest ranking officer rank. So I do stand above several different people, not by experience, just simply rank. So I've got some items I'll show you today, and what we're going to do is kind of look at exactly what is the armor of God. One of the things that kind of spurred this on is Mr. Wayne had made a comment as he and I were kind of standing around talking with Brother Brentlinger, and Wayne had made a mention about, why certain, kind of a question of why were certain items associated with the different words, and so that's what we're going to do tonight. So we're going to start off here, and I'm going to have Jordan help me out here to show you the items. So the first thing is in Ephesians chapter 6, it goes on about the armor of God, and one of the first things the first item it talks about is it mentions the phrase, having girded your waist with truth. So what Jordan's holding here, these are two items that I have. One of them, the one in his right hand, is a ammunition pouch. It holds 3 magazines of rifle ammunition. The one in the left hand is a first aid kit that standard soldiers would have. But these items, you probably don't understand how this deals with, girding your waist. If, just to be honest with me here, how many people would think that this particular phrase is referring to a belt? I would disagree. So we'll get to that. And so one of the things, just to kind of go over something real quick, what does this phrase actually say? So in the New King James Version, the phrasing is, having girded your waist with truth. In the King James Version, it's having your loins girt about with truth. So the first question is, well, what is truth? It uses this word truth, but exactly what is that? The Oxford Dictionary defines truth as the quality or state of being true, or that which is true according to facts or reality. Also a fact or belief that is accepted as true. So why do we talk about truth when it comes to the armor of God? Well, first we understand that we always have to seek truth and speak truth. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 5, it says of love, love does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth. In Psalms 15, verses 1 through 2, it says, Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle, who may dwell in your holy hill? He who walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart. And then further on we can see in John 14, verses 6, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So truth is something we should look after, we should present, we should speak truth, we should demonstrate truth. So then when it comes to the phrase, gird your waist, or having gird your waist with truth. So what does that mean? And like I said, a lot of people may think, well, this is referring to the soldier's belt that he would wear. Well, not quite. The belt's purpose when it comes to a soldier, especially ancient soldiers or medieval soldiers, is to carry items such as their sword, a knife or a dagger, maybe an archer's arrows, items such as that. Modern soldiers, however, they do have belts, but more often than not, the belt itself doesn't really carry much. It may have an item or two attached to it, but mostly we wear vests nowadays. Police officers do have their own kind of body armor vests, and these vests have these little loops on them. And what you would do is you'd take the pouch or whatever item, such as the ammunition pouch, a grenade pouch, and you would slip it into these loops, and it attaches to the vest. And we do this for the first aid kit and whatnot. we'll look at that phrase again. It says, having girded your waist, and this term is an action. This is not like referring to a specific piece or a specific item. It is something you're meant to do. While we assume this is, while we associate this entire passage as talking about the armor of God, well, this one piece isn't saying put this one specific piece on, put your belt on, put your whatever on. It's do this. You're supposed to gird your waist or prepare yourself with truth. So a real world soldier carries ammunition and other equipment into battle, and we in our spiritual battles, we carry truth into battle. So we, like a modern soldier, we'll carry our ammunition, which is truth of the Bible, or truth of the world. So for our spiritual battles, our truth is our ammunition, it's our grenades, it's our other equipment that we'll use to either help ourselves out. I'm hoping that makes a lot more sense and people have a better understanding of exactly what it says when it says, gird your waist with truth. And the next piece is the breastplate of righteousness. I'm going to have Jordan go ahead and present this. This is a standard issue body armor. I apologize if mine's small because I'm a little guy. But this is what the soldiers use. Soldiers wear in battle. It is a little out of date in terms of the particular pattern, but that's the Army. So that in the passage, it refers to this as the breastplate of righteousness. Now, anybody who's familiar with ancient soldiers or medieval soldiers, when you hear the word breastplate, you think of a giant piece of metal that goes onto the torso of a soldier. Well, that does not look like a breastplate that we would associate that word with, correct? However, that would be. The term righteousness that the Bible uses, exactly what is that? It's kind of an odd word. Now, Vine's Bible dictionary says that the word righteousness, especially in the New Testament, the Greek word, refers to the character or quality of being right or just. And as I studied a little bit, it is the idea of being upright, being right in the terms of morally or spiritually right, and being just, such as in a legal sense. You're being just and true. So again, we'll go back to that first piece. What is a breastplate? So armor for soldiers throughout all of history have had some kind of armor or protection for their torso, for their chest region, their back. And there are of course some military and some civilizations that didn't quite have that. But generally speaking, this is what you're going to see. Soldiers of all throughout history are going to guard their torso, the core of their body. Paul, when he was writing this, would have been referring to a plate of metal, or perhaps a kind of vest made out of linen or other material of the day. If you do a little studying into ancient history, ancient soldiers and armor and stuff, you find out that not every soldier, not every soldier actually wore a plate of metal. There was other kinds of armor that would be more comparable to Kevlar armor, so fabric armor. And this is something that's a lot of soldiers, a lot of civilizations did have available to them is fabric armor of sorts. We get the term breastplate again, from a plate of armor or protection to protect one's breast or chest region. Again, the modern soldier's body armor is a vest of fabric or Kevlar. It's woven together, and the intent of this armor is to catch a bullet or or different projectile, or any projectiles, shrapnel, debris, anything that could harm you, anything that's flying through the air. It's meant to catch it, not necessarily, just stop it dead where it is. If it's going to stop it, that's more or less what the ceramic plates are going to be used for. And the armor itself has, the body armor itself has pouches inside the armor to load in either a steel or a ceramic plate, and that adds extra protection. That's what's really going to stop, say, a bullet, say a rifle bullet, and keep a soldier from getting killed. So how do these connect? A breastplate and righteousness. So if we see in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 4, it says, "Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death." I found some of these verses very interesting on how they connect when they talk about righteousness here. In Proverbs 11, verse 19, it reads, "As righteousness leads to life, so he who pursues evil is to his own death." In Psalms 15, we'll go back to Psalms 15, verse 2, it says, "He who walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart." So righteousness is something very prominent, and it protects a Christian. So righteousness protects a Christian from spiritual death, much like a breastplate or a modern body armor is going to protect a person in the modern, a person in real combat. So the breastplate or the body armor is going to protect predominantly all of your vital organs, because most of your vital organs are going to be in your torso region, your intestines and your guts, your heart, your lungs, the spinal cord in your back. Basically anything that's not the brain is going to be housed in your torso region. So this is a key area. If anybody's going to go into battle, you don't want that spot being hurt. You take damage to your heart, you're pretty much guaranteed to die unless you get immediate attention. If your lung collapses, you're at a high risk of death. If your guts, if your stomach intestinal region gets hit, you're going to be in some serious trouble. You're going to bleed pretty bad. You're going to have, it's not pretty. One of the things the Bible talks about a lot is a person's heart. And so in the human body, the heart is, we understand that the heart pumps the blood, and the blood is the life of the human. If there's no blood, there's no life. You can't live. So that's one of the most important parts of your body that you need to protect. It's a little easier to survive if you get, punctured in the lung, but it's a little more different when your heart gets punctured. The lung's a little bigger, and it's a little easier to keep it together. The heart, though, it's much smaller. You puncture that, especially with a larger round or larger piece of something, that heart goes down and you're pretty much dead. So just as we protect our heart in the real world from death, our righteousness protects our spiritual heart from spiritual death. So as we understand, the righteousness protects our spiritual selves and keeps us at least a little more alive than we would be before. So the next part of the passage says, "Having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace." And I'm going to have Jordan go ahead and present the next thing. So once again, I'm a small guy, but these are the boots that they issued me at basic training. They're just standard issue, very basic military combat boots. But this passage here is a little different. It doesn't specifically name a piece of armor, because it uses the term "having shod your feet." It's a little less misunderstood as opposed to "gird your waist," but more, but a little different as well. But first we're going to look at what does it mean when it says the preparation of the gospel of peace, because that's going to be what we're comparing the two items to. We focus first on the word preparation and then the term gospel of peace. So to be prepared is to be ready, aware, in the right mindset, at least in this context. The gospel of peace, of course, it's a little easier to understand. It's referring to what we are to be prepared with. We are, of course, referring to the gospel of Christ. This is the gospel of peace is another way of referring to this, and the plan of salvation. When it says shod your feet, anybody who understands what the word shod means, it's kind of the past tense form of the verb to shoe. So we are talking about footwear of sorts. But when it comes to when it comes to understanding how this connects in comparing military gear to spiritual gear that we as Christian soldiers are supposed to wear, when it comes to modern military shoes, you'll understand if when you look back at the boots, it does ride high above the ankle. On the bottom of the boot, it's got a nice tread to get good traction. And inside of the arch of at least the boots that I brought with me today, it's got a little extra tread on the inside of the arch of the foot. And what I found out while I was doing some of my training, as I was joining the military, someone let me know that the little tread inside the arch is to help to add extra protection or extra tread and grip, especially when a soldier is trying to climb up a rope. So all of the different design of this has a purpose. And it's made out of, you can get there's different types of boots with different types of treads. There's boots to be worn when it's really cold outside, when it's muddy and wet. There's boots to be worn when you're in a environment that has chemicals or radiation in the air to kind of protect your body and keep you safe. So we may be talking about boots, but not just a specific kind. And even throughout history, you can go back to the ancient soldiers and medieval soldiers. A lot of these guys will have little tacks or spikes on the bottoms of their boots to help keep them grounded and give them sure footing when they're fighting on the battlefield. So what's the connection to this? So one would think that preparation could apply to any piece of armor. If you're not prepared with one piece or the other, well, that's meaningless. But why do we associate preparation with our boots? Or we can think that there's an entirely different word that we could use instead of preparation. Why do we pick out preparation and apply it to this when we can find maybe another word entirely? And like I said, and throughout history, all soldiers needed their good footwear to hold their ground, to stand their ground, give themselves good footing. And the last thing a soldier wants to do is slip and fall on the ground or be walking around in the freezing cold and have frostbite on his toes, and now he can't fight because he can't stand up. The boot's grip gives him the support. The higher it goes above the ankles, gives him good ankle support, so he doesn't fall and twist his ankle and hurt himself. So the spiritual shoes that we wear are the gospel of peace, and this gospel. We need to be prepared with this gospel to give us that sure footing when it comes to spiritual battles. So if we don't have that sure footing, you're not prepared for fight. And it doesn't matter if you have all the other pieces of your armor. If you're not prepared to fight, to be able to keep your footing steady, it doesn't matter if you've got, it doesn't matter if you're fully armored, similar to a medieval knight, or whether you're lightly armored. If you don't have that proper preparation or that sure footing, you're going to slip and fall or twist your ankle, who knows what. And it's not just, we're talking about having the right kind of preparation, not just being prepared in general. So the next thing is the shield of faith, and I did not, at least, let me rephrase that, I did not bring a shield. So modern soldiers, typically speaking, don't carry shields into battle. You'll find shields when it comes to law enforcement riots. The riot shields. Police officers will often carry shields when they got SWAT members going to enter a home. Some soldiers may wear it for very specific. May carry a shield for very specific scenarios, but in general. Modern soldier doesn't have this. I will get to what we do use as a shield, however. So the shield of faith, however, it's pretty cut and dry in terms of understanding it, what it is that's being compared, but not so much by modern people. Like I said, modern soldiers don't carry shields into combat. So let's look into this. First, we have to understand the word faith, because we're comparing a shield to faith. And we tend to have a general understanding and an idea of what exactly faith is. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 and then verse 3. Verse 1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen." And then in verse 3 it says, "By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of the things which are visible. We have faith to believe in things we cannot physically perceive, and to believe in the things that we have the faith to believe that the things we do see and we do read point to the things that they talk about, which are the things they can't see. We can't physically perceive God. We can't physically perceive some of the miracles that He performs even on a daily basis, but there are many things that we can see, we can read about, and we understand. We have the faith to understand. I may not be able to physically reach my hand out and grab hold of God's hand, but I know He's there. Amen. There are things I can see in the universe that says very clearly He must be there. But then why a shield? Why is faith our shield? Well, ancient and medieval Christians would understand this very easily. Again, their soldiers through the medieval times and on back in history very often carried a shield into battle. And again, modern soldiers don't. One of the things we have to understand about why the modern soldier doesn't carry the shield is their hands are already busy. The rifle that the soldier carries is held with two hands, and there are other weapons that they carry into battle that are much larger. Machine guns, rocket launchers, you name it. They need both their hands, so they can't be worrying about holding this shield and then now they've got this big old rifle or maybe who knows what. And when it comes to modern combat, the idea, when it comes to fighting the enemy and getting shot at, I don't want to get hit. I don't want to just, worry. I'd rather not get hit at all as opposed to trying to figure out how to block that projectile, especially when you realize these rounds are flying through the air at supersonic speeds. They're going faster than sound travels. So it's not like you can just throw your shield up and guard yourself when the guy starts shooting at you. However, modern soldiers still use shields of sorts. So we'll use an example, this podium. If we imagine that this podium were a giant rock, or say a tree, that's a shield. This is your protection. When modern soldiers fight, we typically will hide behind physical objects or barriers, a wall, a rock, a tree, hiding inside of some bushes, some tall grass. And just a quick clarification, when it comes to these types of things, the modern military refers to them as cover and concealment. Cover itself refers to a physical object that's meant to actually stop the incoming fire. So that would be your rock, that would be your tree, that would be a concrete wall. Other things that actually are, a mound of dirt, something that's going to stop that round from actually getting to you. Concealment, on the other hand, that's meant to hide or disguise your movements, to kind of make it a little harder for the enemy to see you. This is going to be your bushes, your tall grass, anything that's going to kind of shape, disturb the shape of your silhouette and make it a little harder to kind of make out you or hide you. However, these, when it comes to concealment, that's not actually going to stop a bullet. A bush isn't going to stop a bullet, but a rock will. So that helps us understand how a modern soldier shields themselves. So then the connection, what is it? To put it in terms that a modern person could understand, our shield is a rock that we must use to cover ourselves from enemy fire. We often hear, the Bible refer to a rock or a strong foundation, a rock. You have the parable of the wise man and the foolish man. Well, the wise man built his house on a rock. So the Bible very often refers to rocks as solid foundations or solid, something that you can be grounded on. Not to mention it makes a very good protection. In James chapter 2, verse 26, it says, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead." And I bring this up because regardless of what you use as a shield, whether it's a bush, whether it's a rock, what have you, it's kind of useless if you don't actually use it. And I've have physically seen this in training scenarios where you'll have a young soldier or somebody who's going to drop down and pretend to shoot at a bad guy or hide from a bad guy, and let's say this is our rock, they're laying all the way over here. It doesn't do any good if I'm not behind the rock. It doesn't do any good if I'm not behind the tree. A tree or that rock. And I've gotten mad at a couple of guys that I was out at helping out with an ROTC event that KU and K-State were at. And I watched some of these young cadets who are soon to be lieutenants, and they're dropping down right on the ground where they're at. You get mad at them, you're like, get behind the rock, get behind the tree, get behind the mountain, something. As they've got paintballs flying through the air, smacking them in the rear end and the back. So this shield is useless, whatever it is, whether it's a metal shield, wooden shield that we see a lot of ancient soldiers using, or whether it's a physical rock that a modern soldier would hide behind. The shield is useless if you don't actually utilize it, if you don't actually sit behind it, if you don't properly fight with it. So our faith has to be that shield. The next thing we'll talk about is the helmet of faith. And what Jordan's going to be holding up here is my helmet. The modern soldier just uses this is the current helmet that the modern U.S. soldier wears. So the first thing we'll look at is the word salvation, because it talks about a helmet of salvation. Once again, I use divines, and it defines the word used in the New Testament. The Greek word, it defines it as deliverance, preservation, salvation, of material and temporal deliverance from danger and apprehension, of the spiritual and eternal deliverance granted immediately by God. And that's what the Greek, in the original Greek text, that's what the word translates to. That's what it means. The Greek word that translates to salvation. And when it comes to the soldier's helmet, the modern soldier's helmet, it protects probably the most important part of a human's body, and that's the brain. And when it comes to protecting yourself in combat, there's three parts of your body that are the most important to protect. That's going to be your heart, your lungs, and your brain. If your heart dies, there's no blood flow, and you will die. If your lungs collapse, if your lungs are damaged, if your lungs die, you get no oxygen through your body. If you can't pass oxygen through your body, the rest of your organs shut down, and you die. If your brain suffers injury, if it suffers the correct injury, you're going to have immediate death. If your brain is not immediately, if the damage to your brain is not enough to immediately kill you, it has immediate effects on the rest of the body. I may not injure my leg in combat, but if I suffer the right kind of head injury, I may not be able to use my leg, even though I haven't done anything to it. Well, now I'm walking around unable to use my leg. You have many people who've had head injuries, and now they're unable to walk for the rest of their life, and they didn't do anything to the rest of their body. They just hurt their head. It's a very important part of the body to protect. If I don't have that brain, the whole body can't function. The connection is a little bit easy. Connection's pretty easy when you understand the two. Well, I can I can armor up my whole body, but if I don't have that helmet, if I don't have salvation, I'm dead. If I don't have a physical helmet on my body and I take damage to my head, I'm going to die in combat. If I don't have salvation, I'm going to die a spiritual death in spiritual combat. The soldier's helmet keeps his or her head and brain safer. In real combat, it keeps it safer. It won't protect you permanently. It's not 100% protection. That's the real world. And no matter what the truth you hold, no matter what righteousness you bear, no matter what shield you carry, how you hold it, or how great that faith is, it doesn't even matter how prepared you are, whether you have the proper preparedness. It doesn't mean anything if you don't have salvation. If you don't have that salvation from God, you're going to spiritually die. We see lots of people with different kinds of faith, certain people with greater faith, but if they don't have that proper salvation, you're dead. The last item is the sword. And once again, I don't have a I didn't bring a sword with me, and I don't have a rifle to show. But the sword's a pretty unique one, if I do say. And in the passage, it talks about the sword of the Spirit. It's very easy to understand that the Spirit that it's talking about, we're talking about the Word of God. In the Bible, it repeatedly uses a sword in a figurative or metaphorical or even physical sense. We see swords used a lot. We see several things that are spiritual in nature compared to swords, especially God, stuff that's divine and divine power. And it's one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic weapon of all of human history is a sword. Nearly every civilization has developed a sword of some kind, especially the most powerful of civilizations. It's hard to imagine Rome without thinking about Roman soldiers carrying swords. It's hard to imagine a medieval knight without thinking about the sword he carries. It's hard to imagine even a Japanese samurai without that sword that they have. The sword is a very iconic weapon. There's many different kinds, but we all can easily understand that's a sword. And then in the modern day, we use firearms. We don't use swords or spears or bow. But even today, because of that iconic nature of a sword, we still understand what we're talking about. It's not like I have to compare a rifle and figure out, here's how it connects to a sword. If I say a sword, everybody knows what a sword looks like. Everybody has an idea of that. But one of the very interesting things is that modern firearm used in modern war has that same purpose as a sword. It's used to fight the enemy. It doesn't matter what your armor is, you need something to fight. We're fighting spiritual battles. You need something to fight with. The Bible actually already makes that connection as it compares a sword to God's Word, and it does this more than once. We can see in Revelations chapter 19, verse 15, it says there, "Now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, and with it he should strike the nations." And in this, it's describing John seeing a vision, and what he sees there is Jesus himself coming, and he has an axe. And in this vision, he sees an actual sword coming out of Christ's mouth. And it's a very interesting little way of comparing God's Word, Christ's Word, with the power of a sword. In Hebrews 4 and verse 12, it says, "For the Word of God is living and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword." And the use of the sword is constant in the Bible. The flaming sword that guarded the Garden of Eden. We have multiple references of people being killed by the sword. When it talks about, when Elijah had his victory on Mount Carmel, he didn't go out with a bow and arrow or a spear and kill the false prophets. He used a sword. It says he killed them with a sword. We have the phrase, "live by the sword, die by the sword." We have many. We could probably be here all day mentioning how many times God has an angel carrying a sword, or how many times he uses a sword in a metaphorical sense, or how many times it compares God's word, the words he says as a sword. But regardless of whether we're talking about swords, rifles, or what have you, we are still fighting spiritual battles. We're still fighting battles. Without that weapon, whether it's a spiritual weapon or a physical weapon, you can't fight a battle, let alone a war. Without your armor, whether it's physical or spiritual, you will die in battle, never mind the war. I need all of my armor if I go into combat. Otherwise, I'm going to fall down if I don't have the right boots. I'm going to slip. If I don't have a rifle or some firearm or whatever weapon I'm given, if I don't have that, I can't kill the enemy. I can't fight. If I don't have that body armor, I'm going to die. If I don't have the helmet, I'm going to die. So all these things, I'm hoping we have a better understanding of this. And that was really my intent today, is to kind of gain a better understanding of what it means when it talks about the armor of God. We talk about, and this is one of those things that I kind of thought about. We talk about it a lot. We talk about the armor of God. Put on the armor of God. I think a lot of people don't really understand what that armor is and what these equipment pieces are. There's a lot of people that don't understand the connection between these two, you know. Like I said before, a lot of people, when we think about gird your waist, we think about a belt. Well, then we're not talking about a belt necessarily. We're talking about making sure we have all of our equipment and gear. And especially when we think about modern day people, because we talk about, we'll pull up the passage, we'll pull up Ephesians and talk about the armor of God. And a lot of people say, yeah, that's nice. What is a breastplate? What does it mean when it says carry a shield? Nobody uses a shield anymore. A lot of modern day people don't understand that. There's part of the reason I brought these items in so you can actually see it and understand it, as opposed to just putting up an image on the PowerPoint. And I'll say here, real quick, if anybody wants to come up after services and actually hold these and touch them, you may. Especially for all the little ones, if all the little kids want to look at them. Now, for tonight, we did not really talk about what it means to become a Christian or how to become a Christian. But we did try to get a better understanding of what it is that we use as Christians in our spiritual warfare, to better understand what is this gear that we use, what is this that we're supposed to put on, what is it we use in order to fight our spiritual battles. It's easy to understand. Well, here's what the armor that a Roman soldier used. That's how he fights his battle. Here's what a modern day soldier. But do you even know what you're supposed to use as a spiritual soldier? So I'm hoping we've done that now. So if anybody does need that opportunity tonight to step forward, and either if they want, if they need to become a Christian to be baptized, we'll give you that opportunity tonight. If anybody just needs prayers of the congregation for whatever reason, for public forgiveness or just assistance, you can come forward as time as we sing the song.